All right, we're live again. Second time this week. Lucky people. Today we're talking about customer success as a science. And Shelley, do you want to give us a little bit of a blurb about that? And then I'll sort of lead off into some questions.
I can. So, my philosophy around how customer success is a science is that one of the ways the discipline, the culture of customer success is framed is based on tried and tested methods and practices.
Hmm.
People who work in sales, work in marketing, they all are based off well rehearsed, well known ways of working, numbers of touch points that are needed. And customer success utilizes those in order to communicate with customers and know what engagement models should look like.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
there's a big kind of utilization of all of those well-rehearsed practices themselves that we can take into the way we do things in customer success. So that high level, that's what I mean by science. And I think today we're going to go through a bit more detail, talking through some questions you have for me.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, if you can go into a little bit more detail around sort of how customer success uses that science that you said and how we can build on those sort of philosophies from marketing and sales.
So let's start with, the touch points. Customer engagement is really, really important in customer success. It's a really big part of what CSM day to day looks like. You engage with the customers at the highest level. I mean, the highest touch point level. You've got very frequent points of engagement. So you've got that at one end of the model. And
Hmm.
as you look at the other end, the long tail, some call it, we look at tech touch. And we're going to talk about that, I think, at the end of the session today. But
Yeah.
um, between that and everything in between, we can utilize tech touch to support even the higher engagement models from the customers at the highest level of ARR. So
Great.
we can use those formulas to really create a treatment model. We can create digital touches on a scalable framework.
Hmm.
Um, so scale, I suppose scale and framework are fairly keywords. I think we're going to go on and
Yep.
talk about more. So should I start with scalability?
That's what I was thinking. Let's talk about scalability because I know that's something that I'm really interested in as well. I've had a little bit of experience being in startups where, maybe you're in a small customer success team, things are going really well, but then how do you replicate what you're doing when suddenly you've gone from 30 accounts to 130 accounts? It's just
Yeah,
not scalable if you don't have the personnel to kind of cater to it, right?
and it's easy to do the in-person touch. If
Hmm.
you're a relationship manager, you know how to engage with people, you know how to talk to people. So picking up the phone, getting on a meeting, sending an email, they're all really easy, high touch channels of
Yeah.
engaging. So one of the struggles that people find, I see more and more, is they, particularly in startups and often big businesses as well, are doing that high touch and they don't know how to scale and use that framework of what those scientific methodology looks like from the frequency of engagement. How do you what's the word I'm looking for? How do you convert that into the lower
Hmm.
end?
Yep.
So the scalable piece, when you're so used to working in a high touch environment, it's really difficult to then transition back to
Yeah.
that digital touch or that
That's
tech
a really
touch.
good
Or
point. Yeah.
really difficult. And there are many, many one-to-many practices that are available from the utilizing the engagement model at the high touch. Um, Things like, for example, town halls, webinars, meetings
Hmm.
on scale, segmentation, things that you can do on scale, but still speak to a subset of your customers, but on scale. You're doing a one-to-many practice.
Right.
Um, the thing about that also means that even high-end customers, your high-touch customers,
Hmm.
can benefit from that program as well. So if you have a tech touch program running for your lower end customers, maybe your smaller businesses, you can also utilize that and repurpose it for the CSMs at the high end.
Yep.
And what that does is, the main benefit is you can identify different messages to different segments through a one-to-many process. It saves time.
Yep.
And also it means that if you're saving a CSM's time, they're not working on the administrative side of things. They are delivering a message or a piece of value to a customer at the high end, and they're able to spend more and more time with that customer as a result, which is always better from a high-end perspective.
Definitely. Okay, so then what are some of the practices? So we've spoken a little bit, so you mentioned town halls or sort of webinars. What are the other pieces that you think would save the most time really for the higher end, and then are crucial to, because that tech touch base, that can sometimes be a really sizable chunk too, right? So how do we keep them happy with those touch points? Especially when they've been experiencing high touch, that transition. I'm really interested in that.
It's an addition for high-end customers, high touch customers. It's an additional point of value because you're not taking away from their service, you're adding, which is always a really, really great thing. So one thing, we've done at OpenBlend is look at our customer base, before we've done anything tech touch, we're adding in value. So we've added in new resources that are available on demand. We've added in events that are available live and on demand. We've really segmented the messaging, really segmented the content we're delivering. We've been able to open up a success hub that allows all of our admins and our smaller businesses to benefit from a scalable channel. So we've been able to really make resources available for everyone before we start drawing back and start looking, okay, well, these customers who previously perhaps were used to having a quarterly performance review, we may then go to, and we haven't yet, but we may then go to a process where we're delivering that success plan or those data points or a performance review via an email that's drawing data out of our system. We use PlanHat, but I've used Gainsight in the past, where you can really deliver great value. You can benchmark data, you can use data in any way that really helps shape, what success looks like, because at the end of the day, you still have to deliver success. These are outcomes that you're looking to help the customer achieve, and really then be able to service both ends of the customer base. So it's formulaic, it's planned, it's a very systematic approach, and it should benefit both ends of the customer spectrum. So yeah, I would say that I don't know if I answered your question, but
I think so, because our Success Hub, for example, we're very fortunate to have that. I think that's such a lovely thing that's specific to each of our clients. Everyone's got, so it's not a Success Hub for all. It's actually personalized. Each of our clients has a personalized Success Hub, right? But I guess if we're looking at that Success Hub, those pieces in there are already some great tech touch points where we're literally not even doing it. We're doing something once. It's not even an email that we're having to automate or keep track of responses. That's a lovely form that can be personalized to the client too. So I wonder in what other ways, and I'm not sure if this is a question we'll be able to answer, but in what other ways could customers or could people looking at this replicate what we've done there with that the customer portal? Have you seen any examples of that in your time?
From the portal perspective, I think it's always been a big wish of mine to draw together different channels that companies use. This omni-channel experience is where we're all trying to get to. So it's one place for everything to service your accounts. You've got support tickets coming in, you've got communities that are building, you've got articles that they need to read to engage, and be self-service. Plus you've got somewhere where you need to benchmark, help them realize their value. it's really difficult, and I think we are really lucky with our portal. And it's something that, you know, I think I would like to see over time, is that innovation, that
Yeah.
improved customer delivery point. You know,
Yeah.
it's so much better for the customer. It's better for us because we
Yeah.
can, like you say, we can do things once, i.e. we could write a playbook, a task list for new customers onboarding. Hey, we don't need to give you a 3-hour session, because actually we've listed every single task here and all the instructions, every video you need, every piece of documentation, it's there. The
Yeah.
customers love it. They can do it in their own time. But
Yeah.
when it comes
Yeah.
to you know, pulling everything together, it does get a bit more complicated. And I think I would expect actually there to be a trend in that over the next few years, because a lot of the customer success tools that we use are very customer management and customer success manager driven. So how a leader manages the team to ensure that that structure is in place, that those touch points are happening when they need to. Because without that visibility, it's very difficult for a leader to change a team from being a really reactive state and managing inbound to being very, very proactive, value and outcomes driven.
Yeah.
And if you then take it that one step further and say, well, you know, we are customer centric, and actually it's really about the end user experience. You know,
Yeah.
the customer needs to find us really easy to work with. It needs to be an amazing experience all the way through the journey. And that can, in our experience, can be achieved through the portal that we have.
Yeah.
But it's not a widely used piece of tech, and I'm hoping
Which
that.
is, it's interesting though, because most sort of tools that I've come into contact with have, you know, you have to log in as a user, right? So even if there isn't such a thing as a customer portal, using the notifications to update your customer on signposting and things like that, I feel like even that is underutilized. And that
Mhm.
in itself, knowing the concise messaging, I feel like that's part of the customer success science piece. You know, making sure you're giving your customers as much information as possible without having that bombardment. Um,
Well, yeah, I mean, you're taking it one step further, which is terrific. So it's something I hadn't mentioned, and that is, how do you bring together, you know, on a high touch model, you would sit down with the customer, you may do some extra work training them or spending time with them to go through the product if needed, or they've gone through extensive training if it's a big enterprise product, or anything in between. And actually, the use of tech allows us to, and you see it more and more actually in SaaS businesses like, I don't know, Netflix and Spotify, kind of good examples of, you know, the messages will come up. This is something new. You need to see this, or
yeah,
they'll, you know, Spotify, I love how they do an end of year roundup of all your favorite
yeah,
music that
really
you've
lovely.
listened to, or, you know, what's trending. This is out now. These are your preferences, and really tailor it. And it's doing the job of a CSM.
Yeah,
It's driving outcomes,
yeah,
but it's doing it through the product. And actually, when you have it in the product and you get that right, the adoption should be, you know, pretty much you know, replicated as if you'd been through training, maybe even more impactful than training, if you
yeah,
get it right. I've seen it done, you know, poorly as well. You know, when you
yeah,
join a new piece of software and there's just all this messaging everywhere and it's just overload, it's too much.
yeah, yeah.
um
Well, as I say, like that in itself, the management of the messaging and the comms, that in itself is a science, right? How have you, over your time, I imagine you haven't always got it right in terms of how much information to give to a client and how little. How do you manage that piece?
I think you have to really strip it back to understand the different stages that users go through, and who
Hmm.
you're talking to at any given time. So we speak to administrators, and we also have messaging for our end users who we don't speak to other than through the product.
Yeah,
So they're different messages. And it has to be, what's the priority of what we need them to know at this point.
yeah,
So for us at the moment, we have the notifications telling admins when there's a new product release, and there's a
yeah,
link to it, and we can drive that message to the admins quite easily. from an end user perspective, there's always going to be new users joining, so that onboarding experience really needs to be simplified and scaled down. What are the three if they did this and this, what does that drive? And it's also measuring it, because you may not get it right first time. There may be too many messages or too few. So it's understanding that journey, and that's really in depth. You could go on to really tweak that over a period of time with different audiences. One, I've had the pleasure of working with Gainsight for many years, and we have used Gainsight PX, which is an overlay of data, so we can understand the journey through the product. So if someone logs in, where do they click first, and where are they going after that? Because then you can really look at the journey and see, well, why people are missing that message. They're going straight to here. Why is that? And then the product can be revised to work alongside that. But that is science gone,
that's totally next level, isn't it?
Madness. I love it. I absolutely love it, because I'm so data driven. I really want to know, how are people behaving? Why? So if we come back, bring it back to Tech Touch, that is in itself, a form of data analytics, analysis, looking at trends which inform communications that go out to your Tech Touch customers. Now, the Tech Touch customers is a segment. They could be your baseline, long tail, lower end ARR customers, but the Tech Touch program, as we've discussed, also should hit and benefit your higher end customers. So if you are I've lost my train of thought. That's so annoying. What was I saying? Oh, we're talking about the health score. So Tech Touch, if you are driving health scores, we're looking at health scores. So for example, you could use data in order to understand what some of the leading indicators of health are, because you're not having that engagement, you're not having that one-to-one conversation, you've got no way of knowing whether this customer is healthy other than through data points. So we're using that data to really help drive decisions. So from a Tech Touch perspective, if you have a health score that is defined by the key metrics that indicate whether a customer is healthy, are they using the product, is the adoption there, are they overutilizing support, are they underutilizing it, have they given a very, very poor or good NPS score, are they responding to emails, and are they showing up to our events? That kind of engagement piece, and particularly in Tech Touch, should be really heavily weighted, because if you're not delivering content through your digital touch, regardless of whether that's a message in the product or in an email, then it's not the right message. You need to change the message to engage them. Otherwise, you're not going to move the needle. And my teams in the past, heard me say that a lot. You have to move the needle. You're normally doing it on scale with Tech Touch, so you really need to make decisions based on data that is driving the right messaging to the right people at the right time. And then I think we talked previously about that just-in-time touch when it comes to Tech Touch, because you can catch people, because you have leading and lagging indicators. You can look at these leading indicators. Their health's dropped. Well, why? They've stopped opening emails. They've stopped showing up to our webinars. They overly heavily on support at the moment. They are indicators they need help, and we can prescribe the right content to them if we can understand what they need. So that was a bit of a long rant.
No,
my soapbox for that, Clarice.
There was a lot. It was a lot coming in, and I was like, oh, and that I wanna go back to that. But no, it's good.
You got me talking about Tech Touch. I could talk about that all day.
I know. I love it. So you mentioned the health score. Health score is something that I think you've mentioned all the different components that can go into that, the lagging and the leading. I guess is it fair to say everybody's health score will be comprised of different factors, or would you say there is just sort of a baseline to watch out for as a leader?
In my coaching, I do recommend some guides to the indicators, but it would depend very much on how the business is running and what data points you've got to draw on. So, usage obviously is a big one. If they're not using the product, it's a big indicator of, they haven't onboarded properly, probably most likely going to be not renewing. If they're giving you a poor NPS score, if you're using NPS or CSAT, again,
Yep.
really simple way of knowing, whether the customer is happy or not. Not everyone has good data to draw from, so it is a little bit of an experiment. And I would say, experiment with different health scores, because use different weightings, but do it over a long enough period of time to really know whether it's effective. It's no good if you just do it over a month or 2 months. You need a lot longer period to really identify whether it's working or not.
Okay.
One of the things that I had great success in, actually, we were managing 17,000 customers just with 4 CSMs, and
Well,
we had to manage an inbox, which was, just, I can't even remember how many emails we got inbound every single day from customers, and I had 4 people to manage that. And even so, even that was done on scale. So the inbound management of those inbound requests was one thing. But when we actually looked at the data, and we did this a lot, we looked at, right, what's going on in these red health scores, because that's where I need to move the needle. These are the people who, chances are, they've got someone who's left and no one's logging in because the person in that account, remembering these people are generally smaller customers, so
yeah.
you don't have big teams to get in touch with. Normally it's 1 or 2 or 3 people, and
Mm.
if it is just one and they leave the business, chances are they've not left detailed instructions on how to log into your software. So, and
Yeah.
then an invoice hits and they don't pay the invoice, so they haven't logged in and they haven't paid the invoice. So then that becomes a really big problem for finance.
Yeah.
And you become finance's best friend if you can fix that problem.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
so we took those red accounts and did some data analysis on them, and found that those accounts maybe only had 1 or 2 contacts that we had recorded. We then looked at that versus the product to see how many user logins they had created. So there was a analysis there, and we were able to really drive improvement in that area. So the health score went up.
Great.
And we were able to go out to the market. There were such big numbers, obviously 17,000 customers, and say, what do you want us to do sessions on? Where do you need help? Like, what? And funny enough, we did, I think, a session of 3 or 5 different training sessions. It was a one-to-many, had hundreds of people show up to these sessions, but it was giving them what they wanted. They
Yeah.
wanted to know how to run a query. They wanted to know how to set up some form. Okay, that's super easy. We'll just do it on scale and record it and put it in knowledge base. So if an email comes into the inbox, we have that knowledge base and
Yeah.
the video, we can send it to them.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. I do wonder how many companies are giving their clients what they think their clients want without actually asking the question, what is it that you want to be seeing? What is it that you want to be notified about? You know, and not really considering those practices when they're so crucial to that health score and that growth, all of the sort of key metrics that businesses are considering, right?
Yeah, I mean, if we look at what we're trying to achieve, baseline is we're trying to keep their business.
Mm.
We're trying to keep them engaged. We want them to renew. So you use the science to make sure that you've got regular engagements. Those engagements bring value, and they're having a great experience, and they're reaching the outcomes that they originally bought your product for. They're reaching what success looks like. So if you can listen to your customers, and even from your high-end customers where you do have that CSM engagement, very high touch, you can use, the majority of your businesses that have a CSM, a dedicated CSM, you can be a listening post. You can take feedback and have that feedback loop that goes into your Tech Touch program, goes into how you segment your data, how you put out content, how you prioritize content. It might be that the content you're creating is just totally missing the mark.
Yeah.
Or you've got some, I know we have some pieces of content that just fly out of the door.
Yeah.
We know we've got some top, pieces of content that just go round and round and round. They just, have so many views. So, how else could you deliver that in a different way that might speak to another group of people?
Yeah.
but you have to listen to the customer and know what their issues are.
Yeah, and it's a bit of an endless loop, isn't it? That part of things. I think another question you mentioned when you were up on that soapbox, which I very much enjoyed, was the transition from some customers from that high touch to the tech touch. Can you speak a bit more about that? Like how companies can manage that piece, how they can manage the messaging to the clients. Yeah.
So you're suggesting that someone was a high touch. So we're
Yeah.
looking back at that scale up or startup business where they're used to
Exactly.
having most likely a very reactive CSM.
Yeah.
I think from a management perspective, it is a change management program. It's about resetting expectations. It's about bringing more value, not taking value away. So you get high value with a dedicated CSM. But if that dedicated CSM is not able to get back to you for 2 days because they are so swamped by the inbound, then actually, if you run a team inbox, for example, and you have someone always monitoring that, and you have an SLA, let's say, of 2 hours, that person will actually get better service.
Yep.
So you're communicating to them, you are going to get more value because we're able to help you quicker. We're spending time listening to you to build content that will help you. You can repurpose it internally, you can use it yourself, you can ask questions about it. We're here to support, but we're slightly changing and resetting the expectations. One thing I have found, actually, from a leadership perspective, it's not just about changing the customer's mind or giving them, reassurance that everything's going to be okay. It's a change in the way the CSMs work.
Okay.
And if you are used to it and you're comfortable, and we talked about the personality and the art of relationship management. Not many CSMs can make that transition into being a lower touch CSM because they have the personality. They want to help. They want to go above and beyond. So it does take a certain CSM to move from high-end, high touch to low touch. And I would say I would hire differently for low touch or tech touch or ops teams because it's a different mentality. It's more data driven.
Yeah, and I guess more technical, more scientific in terms of computer scientific, in the way that you need to set up these processes. Because I know I've been that customer success manager where I've dreamed of the processes that we've spoken about today, but just even the time to bring that up with a manager to be like, we need to stop because we need to change things. So I do wonder sometimes it takes people to a certain point where customers will churn because they're not getting the service, because there's this tidal wave, and then taking a beat. Need to take a beat, put some of these practices into place, and the change that they'll see will really have such a positive effect, right, on all of the factors that we've spoken about. So finally, Shelley, the relationship management piece. I guess we've spoken about it a little bit in terms of reactive versus proactive. What are the other elements of the science behind that?
I think I'm a big fan of being customer centric and really bringing it back to the customer. So I would never do anything that damages the customer relationship. But you also have to put measures in place that allow them to be successful, allow them to have outcomes based, value, but also protect your CSMs from being in that reactive state. So when you're able to put in processes and perhaps prioritize which processes you put in place to begin with, that's going to be the less painful, the least painful, and ones that make the biggest impact. So being able to automate things, help the CSM out when it comes to administrative time. It might be that your CSMs aren't spending a lot of time on admin, so find where they are spending a lot of time and find that one thing that could be scaled for improvement. And something as simple as that CSM using a template instead of always having to redo a deck.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. I think, bringing it back to that science piece, and I know we're nearly at time.
Yeah.
The formula, you want customer outcomes, you want a great customer experience, and that is what customer success is. It's those two things combined. And if you don't know what the outcome is that they're looking for, then how can you give them a great customer experience?
Yeah. That's,
So
I mean, I
that's
don't
the
even want to
formula.
add anything to that. That was just such a good
Drop the
mic drop
mic.
moment. That's it. So if
So
you don't
Clarice, what are
know
we
one of those pieces, you won't get the other one, and you certainly won't get good customer success. So next
what are we
time,
talking about next time? Yeah.
which is
Final piece in the puzzle.
Thursday, 4 p.m. We're talking about the team, customer success, the team. And it's going to be another one where Shelley and I could go on for days, I think. Certainly something that I'm very much looking forward to talking about.
Yeah, I think we've got a special team, so I'm looking forward to talking about that from our
Yeah.
perspective. But thanks for joining, everyone. See you next
Yeah.
time.
Thank you.